I've been on this journey of playing all the big 1.3 Terraria mods for quite a while now, with some of them being really good game-changing mods, and others not so much. But out of all of them, I've yet to see something truly spectacular. Like, yeah, I've seen some crazy awesome stuff along the way, but nothing has blown me out of the water yet. Nothing has truly given me that little feeling in my chest that leaves me hungry for more. Until now. I played the Terraria split mod, and for the first time, I was in awe at what a 1.3 mod could actually be. The weapons were stunning, the armor was unbelievably cool, and don't even get me started on the boss fights because I actually have no words for how sick they were. I hope you're ready, because this mod is the closest thing I've seen to something like Starlight River. The first thing I noticed after loading up a new world was a strange exclamation point above the guide, so I went over to talk to him and he said, "Greetings! You probably already know who I am, but it doesn't matter now. I want you to go to the depths of the world's evil and talk to my..." Wait, who said that? I don't want to. No! Hello. If you want to survive, you'll need to make some weapons and shelter. Start by chopping down trees and gathering wood. It seemed like something had possessed the guide there for a minute, but I obviously had no clue what, and even if I did, I had nothing to do about it, so I chopped some wood and got to exploring like the guide said to do. To my right was the corruption, and to my left was the desert, and neither side had a cave, so I just returned to spawn and started making a house. During the construction, I made myself a wooden racket that wasn't the best weapon in the world, but it was better than my sluggish copper short sword. Once my house was quote-unquote finished, I headed back towards the desert to try and cross it again, but to no avail. I was able to gather up enough cacti while I was there to make some cactus armor though. With both sides of my world in the shitter, I decided that the only way for me to actually progress would be to just start the elevator way earlier than I usually do. I was worried at first because in my experience, elevators aren't any good until you mine through like half of the world, but this time around I was able to find plenty of ores and even a cloud on a bottle. I used some of the gold that I found to make a gold claymore. It swung super slow, but it did hit pretty hard. I needed a bit more gold to make armor, so I continued the elevator, and in doing so, I found an armor polishing kit that grants a piece of armor some random prefix. I was gonna just use it right away on my cactus armor, but then I decided that would be really dumb. Once I had enough gold, I returned home, made full gold armor, and then applied the polishing kits to my armor, and it gave me an extra 6 defense, which is pretty sick. After that, I just continued the elevator to a point where I couldn't go any further since I can't mine obsidian. But during this time, I got a whoopee cushion from a worm and used it to upgrade my racket to the stinky racket because it deals an extra 3 damage. I then decided to start exploring the surface again since I could now actually manage my way past the desert. I ended up finding a desert temple with a magic carpet inside, but all I really cared about was that I found the jungle right on the other side of it. All I was looking for in the jungle were life crystals, but I did come across a bunch of chests along the way that I was more than happy to loot. Now that my health was completely full, it was time for some bosses, so I made a gold crown, grabbed some gel, and headed on over to the corruption where I made myself a slimy crown so that I could summon the king slime. As I was leaving the corruption, I noticed a little pair of purple glowing eyes in the wall with an exclamation point right above them, so I did what I thought was the obvious solution and just blew a hole in the wall until I reached a man named Erebus. He handed me a low-tech remote and told me to use it in my time of greatest need or just when I get bored. He sold a variety of random items, and I ended up buying a suspicious-looking jawbone that doubles the spawn rate and spawn limit of enemies. I then returned home and defeated the king slime. Unfortunately, I didn't get a slimy saddle this time around, but I wasn't too upset over it, it's just kind of an inconvenience. I was going to use the low-tech remote right away, but it says I can only use it at night, so I gave it up for now and started doing some research into some new weapons. After a little bit of time had passed, I figured out that the only thing I could technically make is a crab ket that deals double the damage of my sneaky racket, but I would have to beat a mini-boss that only spawns in the ocean, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that for whatever reason, the ocean just doesn't spawn in Terraria 1.3. I don't know why, it's just not there. In the end, I decided to just mirror my house and then make an arena to prepare for the Eye of Cthulhu. Everything was done once night arrived, but before I took on the Eye of Cthulhu, I chose to use that low-tech remote to see who would receive its signal because I had a sneaking suspicion that it was just going to summon a boss, and after listening to some sick-ass beats for a few seconds, my suspicions were confirmed. The boss was named Spirit, and she didn't appear to be too difficult, but about halfway through the fight, she summoned this orb of inspiration that completely healed her. Like all the way back to full health. This one attempt took the entire night, so I figured I could use the day to better prepare myself for the fight, but no, I was instead raided by the goblin army and forgot that I had a suspicious looking jawbone equipped, so the enemy spawns were insane. By the time I had defeated them, night was closing in fast, so I super quickly made a second platform right above the original and defeated Spirit. That fight dragged on for so long. Like, it took me 7 minutes to get it done. And that's like double what a usual boss fight takes. Anyways, Spirit stuck around for a little bit as an NPC, and apparently she didn't mean to come here at all. Her transmitter received the signal that I sent out, and she got me confused for a space pirate. Spirit ended up dropping 3 items. A skull heart that says Janoshi could be interested in that, a red patch accessory that makes my first blow to an enemy deal double damage, and a wooden scepter. It's a magic weapon that turns out to be shit. I equipped the red patch and then started racking my brain trying to figure out who the hell Janoshi was. I came to the conclusion that this mystery person was just going to be some NPC, so I got started on some NPC housing. It was night by the time I was done, and I'd made 8 fully furnished, beautiful rooms, so to reward myself for all that taxing blue-collar labor, I took on and defeated the Eye of Cthulhu, but bro, this fight took so long with this shitty-ass stinky racket. Now that I had the Shield of Cthulhu, I swapped out the red patch for it since the red patch only worked for a single hit anyways. I wanted to finish exploring the left side of my world, so I left to go do that, and on my way I found a chunk of the moon just lying on the ground like a fallen star, so I did what anyone would do and picked it up. It turned out to be a little crescent moon pet, and I don't know what it is about this guy, but I love him. There was nothing else of significance on the left side of my world other than a second desert temple, but all it had was another flying carpet, so it didn't matter. When I returned home, all of the NPC rooms had been filled, but there was still no sign of this Janoshi person, so I built 8 more rooms and gave it some more time. By the time night arrived, Janoshi still hadn't moved in, so instead of waiting and giving the skull heart to him like I was going to do, I turned it into a diamond ship, and this thing confused me at first, but it was most definitely guiding me somewhere, so I chose to follow it. The ship was shooting out this pulse of sound that not only pointed towards something, but its pitch ended up getting higher and higher the closer I got to whatever it was leading me to. It low-key reminded me of the Starlight River mod, like the animation on it was just beautiful. It took me all the way to the tundra and then told me to start mining down, so I did, and the deeper I got, the faster the pulse of sound got until I eventually ran into some glowing, sparkly area. This place was filled to the brim with these jellyfish-looking things called witnesses, and I thought they looked so cool. There were a couple of chests littered around with things like guns and pets, and the further I got down, the more I realized that this was actually a pirate ship, which makes sense since I used a diamond ship to get here. What really confused me though were these gravestones that were scattered everywhere, labeled with various different names like Kirill and Oscar. I don't know who these people are, and I likely never will. Anyways, there were a whole bunch of pirates that I had to deal with, mainly since I forgot to take off my suspicious looking job mode. The pirates dropped shards of glass, and the witnesses dropped moon dust, but all I cared about was this dope-ass corn boss painting from Castle Crashers. I ripped that shit right off the wall to put in my home. Once I was back home, I found out that the moon dust isn't used for anything just yet, and the pieces of glass are really only used to make this glasserang that breaks into 2 pieces upon hitting an enemy, dealing 2 hits rather than just 1. And it was honestly so much better than the racket I was using. It was so good. I then noticed that both Janoshi and some other new NPC had moved in, so I started by talking to Chloe the Shutterbug first. She gave me a groovy camera and told me to go take some photos of various creatures that I come across and that she would reward me for the photo. This is future Oklah here, by the way. I'm not gonna mention the camera for the rest of this video because the rewards were just like silly things you can just get in chests. Like I got an aglet from one of them. It was just useless. I then had a talk with Janoshi, and apparently he's only here since Spirit, the boss that I had just defeated, wouldn't stop talking about me, but he said he's here to help. He sold a golden sickle melee weapon, a goofy mask, and a painting called the Nexus. I ended up buying the golden sickle, but it wasn't nearly as good as the glass ring I had just made. Also, I forgot to mention that I stole a snowball turret from that frozen ship, and I never actually used it, but it was still kinda cool just to have around. I then made more NPC housing, loaded my Claw, which is the gun I found down that pirate ship, and headed to the corruption to defeat the Eater of Worlds. But I ended up getting stuck in one of the holes and died. This is why the Crimson is just better. For my next attempt, I decided to make a long platform above all the holes and then just farm Eaters of Souls for their rotten flesh so I could just summon and defeat the boss above all of these shitty assholes. That's what I did. I'm telling you, that's what I did. I then used the Demonite that I got to make a full set of Shadow Armor. Earlier on, I got a status message that let me know a meteor had landed, so I took off to the left to find it and maybe make some cool new gear, but all I ended up finding was a menacing person that, when challenged, summoned a boss called the Menace that I was not ready for whatsoever, so I obviously lost. I then began searching the right side of my world for the meteor, and yes, I did find it, but I also found that traveling merchant type guy that I now know as the Twilight Walker. He sold a couple new things, but the only item I was actually interested in was the Song of the Siren, so I bought it, grabbed my meteorite, and made my way home. There wasn't anything I could make with the meteorite just yet, so I went over to the traveling merchant to see if he sold anything new, and boy did he! He sold the finest, grooviest, smoothest outfit I have ever seen. Ever known a man for that matter. And I wore this outfit for the rest of the game. Sorry for the spoiler for like the rest of the video, but this shit never comes off. After my glow up, I figured that I was well equipped enough to take on the next boss, so I headed back to that frozen ship in the underground tundra and released one shot from his icy prison. That fight took 11 goddamn minutes, bro. The weapons of this mod are so ass. One Shot dropped a symbolic gift that I'm supposed to give to Jinoshi, a Razorflake staff that summons 2 Razorflakes, a possessed needle that increases armor penetration by 5, an amplifier that's used like a furnace, and 3 elements of ice. I started off by equipping the possessed needle and then gave Jinoshi the symbolic gift in exchange for 33 gold coins, and he basically told me that One Shot was a criminal and that he crash landed here after running from the authorities, which I'm now realizing are just Jinoshi in spirit, like they're the universe cops or whatever. I then started looking up what these elements of ice can make, and they make 3 weapons, one of them being magic and the other 2 being melee. For this playthrough, I was feeling way more into melee, so I decided that I would make the Arctic Oscillation, but I was missing the Frigid Rapier that was needed to make it. Recipe Browser said that I couldn't make it, so I just checked the wiki, and apparently I can exchange the harpoon that I got from the Goblin Army for it. After the exchange, I was about to make the new weapon when I realized that I don't have a Stone of Inspiration that's needed to craft it, and the only way to get one is to use a Skull Heart, which I ended up using on that diamond chip from earlier, so I begrudgingly waited for it to be night and defeated Spirit for another one. Once I got my hands on the Skull Heart, I made the Stone of Inspiration and then used it to make the Arctic Oscillation, and this weapon was so fucking good. Excuse my language, it was just so good. You have no idea how good it was. Thankfully, there was a blood moon going on at the same time that I made the weapon, so I got to spend all night testing it out. Oh, I also tested the Razorflake summon that I got, and they were really good too. So back a couple minutes ago when I was fighting Spirit, I fought her twice and got 2 Skull Hearts and gave my last Skull Heart to Jinoshi in exchange for an accessory that grants me an extra minion slot, so now I can have 4 Razorflakes around me. All of this new gear gave me the perfect boost in my confidence and ego to find that menacing person and challenge them once more. That fight was difficult, but it was so much faster than the other 2 I've done. The only thing of significance that Menace dropped were these elements of air, but I didn't use these till way later. It was now time for the Skeletron fight, so I made my way over to the dungeon, set up an arena, and absolutely destroyed this guy. Like little bro stood no chance whatsoever. It dropped 3 elements of death that are used to make a bunch of new gear, but most of it is locked until hard mode or later. The only thing I could actually make with it was an upgraded version of the Song of the Siren called the Anthem of War, and the name change is actually crazy. I didn't need anything in the dungeon, and I just kind of assumed that there was nothing new down there anyways, so I headed home and found a new NPC that had just moved in, but when I went to talk to her, this pink spirit thing that was attached to her responded and basically said that it hates her and wants to take over the world. Completely disregarding my new guest, I went across the hall to talk to my other new guest, the librarian. He immediately started spouting nonsense about being stuck on a scary ship with a scary guy and not being able to remember his name, but I didn't really care, so I just left him to his thoughts. Once the sun arose, the Goblin army came back for round 2, and this gave me a wonderful opportunity to play around with my new gear. Afterwards, I finally got around to finishing my elevator and gathered up some hellstone, but apparently there isn't anything cool to make with it, so it was kind of a waste of time. I then spent like maybe 10 minutes building a hell highway before summoning the wall of flesh, and I defeated it on my first try. It dropped all of the normal stuff like it usually does, but it also dropped 3 elements of dark. The stuff was used exclusively to make new weapons, and the one that caught my eye was the Blazer Ring, mainly because all it needed was a Flamerang, and I could already make one of those. I ended up making the Blazer Ring with an element of dark and the Sprinkler Rod with an element of ice, and they were both pretty good, but I wasn't satisfied. There was a ranged weapon called the Enforcer that was a direct upgrade to the Cloak that I used in the beginning, and I wanted it. The only issue was that it required 8 of these blue alloys, and they only dropped from armored skeletons and armored vikings, so I dropped down my elevator until I reached the cavern layer and just waited for them to spawn. After like 45-ish minutes, I finally had enough blue alloys to make the Enforcer. I also made this Vamplified scroll that temporarily allows melee weapons to absorb enemies' health, just in case the Enforcer sucked, and unfortunately, it kind of did. Okay, so that was all a huge waste of time, but since I was in the jungle testing things out, I ended up running into our good old friend Spirit. She was tinkering away at something, probably that transmitter that she ended up breaking, and told me to grab her something to eat, so I went home, grabbed some bacon, and returned, but she was nowhere to be found, so for now I just kept the bacon in my inventory. I then finally filled up my extra accessory slot with a Voodoo Heart. It increases armor penetration by 5 and makes my first blow deal double damage. At this point, I wasn't totally convinced that the Enforcer was complete dogshit. Like, I really wanted for it to be good, so I decided I wanted to make some prismatic bullets to see if that would make it any better. I headed over to the hollow and waited until a fairy fly came out, and holy shit was this guy difficult. Like, I barely managed to make it out alive. I used a light core that it dropped to make 333 prismatic bullets, and I chose these bullets specifically because its description says that any gun can be a shotgun if you really want, and so I figured it would fire like a shotgun with the speed of like an assault rifle, and oh my god. I was so fucking right, dude. This thing was mowing through enemies like a lawnmower through grass, bro. It was amazing to watch. I used those bullets to farm for more light cores, but the fairy flies just didn't come out very often at all. Like maybe once every 10 minutes one would pop out. I decided that I didn't want to waste my time for any longer, and instead zipped through all of the Hardmode ores, because I had been in Hardmode for a couple of hours at this point and still hadn't done it. In the end, I made myself some titanium armor and happened to get a modifier on my chestplate that gave me another minion slot. So now I have 10 razor flakes by my side. 10 of them. I was feeling pretty ready at this point to start taking on some bosses, so I waited for night to arrive to summon the destroyer, and oh my god, I know I already said this before, but these bullets absolutely melted him, bro. Like, I mean, I ran out of the bullets like midway through the fight, but it didn't even matter. The fight was over with. After that fight, I knew I was going to need more of those bullets, so I took my ass back to the hollow and got to farming. They spawned so infrequently that in the 30 minutes I was in the hollow, only one spawned. So as much as it pains me, I chose to just make crystal bullets instead. I then made a new melee weapon called Welking that dealt almost double the damage of my Blazer Ring and gave me the ability to dash. I was about to start taking on more of the mech bosses when I realized that I had completely forgotten about the modded bosses and actually skipped one of them. I immediately headed down to hell to start looking for the new biome that I needed to explore in order to summon this boss, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It took me like 30 minutes of map scanning and just pure luck until I was able to find the Underworld domain. This place was scary, bro. Like, everything was on fire, these geysers would appear right below me and deal massive damage, and the spawn rate was cranked all the way to 100. Like, I thought my suspicious looking jawbone increased the spawn rate by a lot, but holy shit was it bad in here. There were a couple of these tectonic chests scattered about, but they required a key to open them, so after a bit of research, I found out that I needed to defeat a mini-boss named Breathtaker to get one. In order to summon this guy, I had to make an awesome looking match by combining some Basaltite and a Thonic Pearl, and after getting third-partied on my first attempt, I managed to take out the guy with ease. He dropped me a single key and a few tectonic plates, so I made sure to defeat him one more time just in case I needed another key. With how chaotic this place is, I didn't really have time to look through the loot I was getting, so I just kind of threw everything I could into my inventory and just left it at that. After looting just a couple of chests, I figured that was enough and just headed home for now. I ended up using those tectonic plates that the Breathtaker mini-boss dropped to make tectonic armor. I ended up losing a bit of defense, but those annoying-ass guys just wouldn't follow me anymore, and the armor increased my damage and crit chance based on how fast I was moving. It was kind of fire. One of the tectonic chests gave me a new melee weapon called the Instigator. It was a racket-type weapon that dealt nearly 50 damage less than my Welking, but it tosses around 3 fireballs that explode on impact, so I wanted to give it a try. In order to give this weapon its best shot at being like actually good, I made a badminton bag that enhances my badminton capabilities and adds an additional fireball for me to whack. I headed back to the Underworld domain to test this weapon out and loot some more chests while I was at it, and it was so much better than that shit ass spear I was using. In one of the chests was a Vulcanian staff that summoned molten hammers to fight for me. Also, I like this armor so much, I used up all of my armor polishing kits on it to increase its defense from 50 to 58. As if things weren't already going really well for me, I found out that my new Instigator racket could be upgraded, so I took out an ice golem and used its core to make the Chill Blade. It only dealt a little bit more damage, but instead of having fireballs that explode on impact, it had frost balls that shatter on impact. It was kind of like using crystal bullets instead of explosive bullets. I then finally decided to take off that suspicious looking jawbone and replace it with the warrior emblem just for some extra damage, but don't you worry though, I still kept the jawbone on me for when I would need it. I was now fully, entirely, 100% ready to take on some bosses, so I went down to hell and started looking for a cage. After a little bit, I came across one, but it had a sign on it that clearly read, "Don't unlock at any cost." And as much as I wanted to defy the sign and open it right away, I needed another tectonic key. I quickly took out Breathtaker once more for a key and unlocked the cage. As soon as the cage opened, a girl named Paraffin came out, and she didn't attack me or anything. It seemed like she just wanted to talk, but based on the status message I got after opening the cage, I figured that this wasn't going to end well. I chose to talk to her, and she told me that together we were going to rock this world whether I liked it or not, so I naturally chose to let her down easy and reject her, but Paraffin was not happy with my answer. So unhappy, in fact, that she decided to eviscerate me. As soon as I entered hell again to ask for a rematch, she flew in out of nowhere and started saying all sorts of really mean things to me, so I did what anybody would do in my situation and beat her to a pulp. The fight was super cool, and I loved all of her animations, but choosing those spinning moves that render you immobile for like a split second or two was not the best choice on her part. Paraffin dropped a troublesome vessel that only said it was sealed and locked and needed some love, so I just favorited the item, not actually thinking that it would work. But it did. It worked. It turned into Pandora's Cup that apparently summons the greatest adversary. I ignored it for now and instead gave all of my attention to this sick-ass guitar she dropped called Hellgaze, but as much as I wanted this weapon to be good, it just wasn't. Right after I was done sorting through all the shit that I had got, I took on and defeated both the Twins and Skeletron Prime. The next boss was supposed to be waiting for me in the desert, so I went over there to search and came across a strange communicator with a mysterious lady floating above it. I decided to talk to said lady, and right off the bat she seemed pretty evil, but after talking to her for a bit, I found out that she just wanted to put on a show, and I would just so happen to be the star. She told me to come back at night, so in the meantime, I killed some corrupt mimics for an evil catalyst so that I could combine it with the malicious bangle and make the Nemesis. It significantly increases damage done to enemies inflicted with Ichor. Once the sun had fully set, I made my way over to the desert, found the mysterious lady again, and put on a show. Honestly, this fight was super easy, but I really liked her death animation at the end. It was like she enjoyed the fight, you know what I mean? Mirage dropped a wanted poster of a man named Oscar Loneshot that said he was a pathetic betrayer and a thief, but based on the graves that I found on that frozen ship a while back, I don't think I'll have to worry about him whatsoever. She also dropped some magic weapon, an accessory that I never used, and 3 elements of art. They made some cool looking weapons, but most of them couldn't be made for a little while, so I just forgot about them for now. The wanted poster had a little bit of text under it that said Jinoshi would be disturbed by it, so I obviously showed it to him, and he basically just told me to get it out of his sight. He was not happy I brought it to him whatsoever. Also, apparently the librarian just up and left right after my fight with Mirage. I guess he didn't like the rent I was charging him or something. I don't know, but he's gone. He's gone forever. I had nothing else left to do other than fight the Plantera, so I headed over to the jungle and got started on Arena. I really didn't want this to take too long, so I made a bunch of boom shurikens to help me dig, and this made things go by so much faster. After finishing the arena, I noticed that it was way smaller than I usually make it, but I didn't really care too much at this point, so I just summoned the Plantera and defeated her pretty easily. I then turned the temple key that the Plantera always drops into the summon for the next boss, Insurgent, but before I took him on, I defeated the Golem. There's nothing much to say here, he's very easy. The Golem dropped all of its usual stuff, but he also dropped 3 elements of life. These elements are used to make 4 weapons, but the only one that I was actually interested in was the Terra racket, whatever, the racket equivalent of the Terra Blade. The best part about this weapon was that I already had pretty much everything I needed to make it. I only needed to make a rib racket, which I just need to find an enchanted racket for, but little did I know that finding an enchanted racket was going to be quite the ordeal. It took me about 30 minutes and like 2,000 boom shurikens to just straight up blast through my world until I actually found one. During this time, I ran into Mirage again, but this time she was with the librarian. Mirage seemed to be mourning the death of Oscar Loneshot, as if he was like her lover or something, and the librarian, now known as Agent Blank, regained his memories that he lost and said that Loneshot was his boss and that Jinoshi had turned the entire Nexus against them using his position of authority. He then said some stuff about how he's worried for Loneshot, but it seems like he's kind of in denial of Loneshot's death, because Oscar is definitely dead. I saw his grave. He is dead. Honestly, I'm not really sure who to side with, Jinoshi or, like, Mirage and them, but, I'll kill them all if I have to. I'll murder them all if I need to. Anyways, now that I had an enchanted racket, I was able to make the Terraria, and it seemed pretty fire. There honestly wasn't much else for me to do at this point, so once that arrived, I used that rusted key that I made and summoned Insurgent. That fight, unlike some of the other bosses, was actually pretty difficult. Like the move where he makes me unable to use items really sucked. Insurgent dropped an Eon of Captivity accessory that releases homing skulls when moving, a possessed armor piece that makes a really nice set of new armor, and 3 elements of pain. These elements made a weapon called Hard Drive that seemed pretty interesting to me, mainly because you could stack up to 5 of them, and that sounds like it'll deal a lot of damage. Each hard drive needed a light disc and 5 black alloys. The light discs were easy enough to get, but the black alloys needed one of each of the hard mode bars to make it, so it took a little bit longer. After gathering up everything that I needed, I made 3 hard drives, and they seemed really good. I put them up against the Insurgent since I needed a couple more of the elements of pain anyways, but at least against him, like, these things sucked. They sucked really bad. Like, I spent the entire night doing this, and I was only able to win once. Because of this, I still needed one more element of pain to finish making all the hard drives, but on the bright side of things, I now had enough possessed armor pieces to make full possessed armor. It only gave me 1 extra defense and actually lowered my damage by a bit, but it gave me 3 more minion slots and the ability to dash through attacks, which in turn opened up an accessory slot because I could take off the Shield of Cthulhu. Right after this, a solar eclipse started, and the hard drives seemed to work really well against these guys, so maybe it's just against the Insurgent that it's bad, I don't know. I didn't want to deal with this event, so I cancelled it, and once everything was bright again, I noticed a new NPC had arrived. He's known as the Pilgrim, and apparently he's just studying all sorts of different ways people can die, and said he would pay me if I died in the ways he wanted me to, so I quickly suffocated myself in sand and drowned myself in lava. After returning to the Pilgrim, he gave me the Darwin Award as payment, and this accessory would revive me to 50% of my health upon death, but only once per life, which, to me, seemed really good, so I equipped it in place of my warrior emblem. Later that night, I defeated Insurgent for the last time, and made the 5th and final hard drive, and my favorite thing about this weapon is that the lasers fire faster for each hard drive. Like, look how fast this thing shoots now, it's crazy. I then got to work on making this accessory called the Painmaker. Its crafting tree is literally as complicated as the Terror Blade, so I won't bore you with all the details of how I made it because it took me over an hour to do. It is a pretty awesome accessory though. It increases armor penetration by 7, increases length of invincibility after taking damage, causes stars, bees, and spike balls to release when injured, releases souls of killed enemies, and increases movement speed after taking damage. During that time, I tried to finish gathering up all of the life roots on a couple separate occasions, but I just couldn't. I couldn't find them all. There was, yet again, not much for me to do, so I just went over to the dungeon and defeated the lunatic cultist. They dropped 3 elements of mind, and it made a few cool looking weapons, but I was only interested in making the Trifesta and the Delicious Saturn, so I gathered up all of their materials and made them, but surprise, they were both pretty ass. Or so I thought. The Trifesta was for sure an ass weapon, like it was just an upgraded version of those other guns that I'd been using before that were all ass, so scrap that one. But I wasn't fully convinced that the Delicious Saturn sucked, so I took it with me to take down the pillars. I used the hard drives to deal with the Nebula pillar to see how long it took, and then used the Delicious Saturn for the solar pillar, and oh my god. Holy shit, was this thing amazing. This weapon seems to gain damage the more it consistently attacks, so it only shines when dealing with massive amounts of enemies. So when I took it to the solar pillar, it was just insta-killing everything it touched. It was dropping literally millions of damage per hit. Like, I remember I saw damage, like Spike earlier, and it did like 77 million damage. It was ridiculous. It was so good that when the barrier around the pillar gave away, it was taken out in one hit. All 20,000 of its health gone in an instant. I quickly built an asphalt path and then used this weapon to take out the remaining 2 pillars before defeating the Moonlord with my hard drives. He dropped 3 elements of space that are used to make the final set of weapons in this mod, so I used them to make an advanced turret staff which just summons those annoying ass turrets from Portal, and then also made the Starlight Breaker. The Starlight Breaker had 2 modes, its spear-like shooting mode and a big ass sweeping laser of death mode. I had now done everything I could to prepare myself for the final boss fight, so I grabbed Pandora's Cup, hauled my new gear over to the asphalt path, and challenged the greatest adversary, Seth. That fight was so pretty, and honestly, thank God for that attack that insta-kills, because without it, this boss would have been a breeze. There would have been no point fighting it. It would have been so easy. Seth dropped this sick-ass sword that was worse than the melee weapon I was using currently, but it was cool nonetheless. He also dropped the Ring of Sun that increases the efficiency of healing potions, 3 elements of fire, and an item called Olympic Torch that says it summons Seth in his prime, and that I would receive the ultimate treasure for defeating him. So I guess I'm not done with this mod just yet. I attempted this version of Seth, but not only is there some sort of cap on the damage he takes now, but he also inflicts some debuff that locks some of my health for healing for a set amount of time, and that timer would just restart every time I took damage. So basically, I was going into a fight where I dealt significantly less damage and just couldn't heal. I am not kidding you. I lost for 3 hours straight. 3 hours straight, and made little to no progress whatsoever. It was an actual hell. I made all sorts of accessories, switched my summon, etc. All to hopefully help my case a little bit, but it amounted to literally nothing when that stupid ass attack would start where I would just insta-die if I got hit. That stupid ass attack only happens once in the original Seth fight, but not in this one. In his prime, it happens 3 different times. Once when he reaches half health, again at like 30% of his health, and a final time just before he dies. It was ridiculous. I remember I actually gave up on fighting this boss. Like, I didn't think I was going to win at all, and I was just getting so tilted while fighting him. But then the next morning, I decided to give it one more shot, and it was like a god was looking down on me from above with hope. Because that next morning, it only took me 20 minutes for a run like this to happen. I had finally done it. I had bested Seth in his prime, bro. Sometimes I play these Terraria mods and I think to myself, bosses from games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls or Bloodborne have fucking nothing against some of these modded bosses I've fought against. All Seth Prime dropped was a champion's key, so I took myself down to the Underworld domain, opened up this absurdly large chest with the key, and got myself Storm Wings, a sick-ass music box, the Lore of Seth, and finally, an accessory called Bury the Light. The new accessory added a super strong slash to attack the nearest enemy every time I attacked. The wings were just super duper cool. The music box played some absolute heat. And the Lore of Seth was just some bullshit about how Seth was he's kind of just been an asshole since birth. And that's it. The mod's over with. It's done. I beat it. I learned more about the lore during editing, and it said that Seth was actually created by this guy named Vulcan down in Hell, and that the world kind of sucked with Seth around, that was quite obvious. In the end, I fought many different beings, traveled to all sorts of places, and looked fine as hell doing it.